Welcome to Grain Damage, brought to you by Arruda Contracting. Find us at facebook.com/Arruda Contracting. Hey, my name is Ben. I'm going to walk you through how I made this rock wall in the basement for my grills. To start off, I cut 2x4x8s in half at 4 feet to build my rock wall in front of the existing frame wall in my basement. I wanted the 2x4s standing the same direction as the existing wall. I achieved this by using 5-inch structural screws, 3 on each piece, to laminate them to the existing 2x4s. First, I pre-drilled some holes about 1 inch deep, so that the head of the screw would be buried into the 2x4, and also give enough reach to the 2x4 behind to suck it in tight. I used a 1/4 horseshoe shim underneath the 2x4s to keep the wood off the cement, as the cement can have moisture build up over time and affect the wood. I left those shims underneath as well so that the weight of everything had something to land on below it, so there's no chance of sagging or sinking. You want to be aware of any electrical you might have running through the walls as well, to make sure you don't put a screw through the wiring. Once I attached all the 2x4s in front, I prepared 2 3/4 inch pieces of plywood for the bottom of the wall. The first 32 inches of the wall I made straight vertical. This is to give the kids a low point to start their climbing from. Before attaching the plywood, I first had to lay out an 8-inch by 8-inch grid and drill all the connecting points so that I can mount the holes in the future. Once I drilled the holes, on the back side I needed to add T-nuts to accept the bolts running through the holes. We are starting with 50 bolts and about 300 T-nuts to fill out our wall. You will also want to make sure that your grid does not land on studs, or you won't be able to get the bolt through the T-nut. Once the girls and I had the holes drilled, we flipped the plywood onto its back and added the T-nuts. Side note, it's a lot easier to add the T-nuts with the plywood flat on the floor or on a table. On sawhorses it bounced quite a bit, so you'll see that we moved it to the floor to hammer them in. Once I had the first piece ready, I temporarily tacked it in place to get the measurement for the next piece. I also kept the plywood 1/4 inch off the ground. Again, we did the grid layout, drilled the holes and added the T-nuts. Once that panel was ready, I tacked that in as well and set up a laser level to make sure that the grid follows a level line. I adjusted the panels as needed to keep the level line across, making sure to keep at least 1/4 inch air gap off the ground. Then we screwed the plywood into every stud with 2-inch number 8 wood screws, about every 10 inches. After that, I added 1 3-inch structural screw to the plywood on each stud, in line with the top hole. My kids will be playing with this for many years, so I'd rather overbuild to start than go back to fix small stuff later. I took the time beforehand to lay out my walls and ceiling in a to-scale blueprint using graph paper, so I could see how everything lined up with the bulkheads, pipes, etc. For the first half of the wall, I needed to come out 22 inches from the wall to the edge of the outside point of the angle. On the floor, I marked out 22 inches from the wall and used my laser to shine the light above to the joists. Then all I had to do was add my 2x4s on the angle, sit it on the plywood, and then line up the 2x4s with the top of my laser line to create the angle I wanted. I did the same thing for the second half of the wall where I wanted a 35-degree angle. I determined I needed to come out 42 inches from the wall and mark that on the floor, and followed the same protocol to line those 2x4s up. To attach them to the stud joist, I used 3-inch structural screws, 2 on the joists and 2 on the stud wall. Next, I cut the side piece where the 2 angles met so I could get my 2 front panels as tight as possible. I decided I would drill the holes for the side angles once they were up, because I wanted to pick random points for them. Then we started to add the bottom of the 22-degree wall, first by doing the grid, drilling, and adding the T-nuts again. You may notice we did not fill the entire back with T-nuts. That's because originally we had a hard time finding the T-nuts in the store, so we had to buy what we could get, and then order more in from Amazon afterwards. So in this video, we only tack up the rest of these pieces. Once the T-nuts came, I had to take those pieces down and install the T-nuts. In the meantime, I did all the prep work possible so that when the T-nuts came, I could just quickly take them down, put the T-nuts in, and then put them back up and screw everything off. Once I got the T-nuts installed, I screwed off the entire thing with the wood screws again, about every 10 inches, and used the structural screws again to really snug that plywood up to the studs. It's probably overkill, but again, I'd rather be over the top than have something falling apart and then my kids getting hurt. How I made all these wood holds, and then obviously we mixed in some plastic holds just from a store. And you can see I thought I had enough to do most of the wall at this point, and as the kids started climbing it, I found out not enough, so I'm gonna have to make some more for this wall. A couple things I would note is that the plywood I got was a good faced plywood, meaning that the very front face of it is like a laminate, basically. It keeps it nice and smooth, which I thought was good for my kids because they climb with their bare feet, and obviously I don't want them getting splinters in their hands or their feet. In the end, I think we probably could have just gotten away with a regular plywood. The other thing being that when you are drilling your holes on the 8-inch grid, I found that using a step bit from the good face facing up at you, going straight down through, it would step down to a 1/2 inch, and then you'd have to switch after you drill all your holes to a 1/2 inch bit to finish the rest of the way through, because otherwise I was having problems where it would explode out around the hole, even with brand new bits. It was just going nuts. So I had to spend a little bit of time. We had to go back around some of the bad ones and sand them out so they were good for the kids again. Of course, half of them probably got covered up with the holes anyways. And the last thing was, you'll notice here the blue crash pads. We're working on a budget. So what we found was, luckily we did this around Christmas time through the break, and Walmart had a Boxing Day sale. So we got a 8-inch thick mattress, queen size mattress, to use as a crash pad. So in the future, I know we were going to eventually put down more padding as we go along, and really ultimately this room is supposed to become a climbing room for them to get everywhere around the room, to the rock wall, back and forth, all that. That's going to take time because, you know, we're a family that lives on a budget. So bit by bit we'll get there, and we'll just do a video for each individual thing, see how it goes along. Until then, yeah, my cost saving tip, or our cost saving tip, was the wife found this queen mattress on sale on Boxing Day, which was like half the price of the crash pads that are, you know, dedicated for this kind of thing. 8 inches thick. They're not going to hurt themselves. It's going to be awesome. So anyways, that's it for this one. We'll see you on the next one when we talk about the holds and how I made those and my tips on that, because that took a bit of effort as well. So see you then.